I've seen The Creator twice now. Alan, you saw The Creator last night. Give us your review and tell us a little bit about the story that you might not have gleaned. What I did like is that the trailers didn't really ruin too much about the story, or at least the second half of the story. And there will be a point in this review where we will pivot to spoilers. You will be warned. You will be warned. We'll put up a warning about spoilers because there are certain things I want to discuss about the film in the third act, but that would spoil the movie. We will not be doing that for the next chunk of our discussion. Alan, tell me the basic story of The Creator.
Yes. Well, the AI has taken over. It has run amok. In a single event, the AI had detonated a nuclear device in Los Angeles, and now the United States is going after all AI. And in the continent of New Asia, the AI live freely amongst the Asians, and so basically the story is about trying to infiltrate the master program called forgot the name of Nirmata, I think is the name. And they're going to take it out and get rid of all AI. And so John David Washington plays kind of a former soldier. He lost his leg, he lost his arm. He's sent in to kind of be undercover to find out where Nirmata is. In the process, falls in love with Maya, played by Gemma Chan, and she is pregnant. And just before at the last moment there, the U.S. troops come in too early and takes out what they think is Nirmata, which it wasn't. And in the process, Maya and the baby are killed. And John David Washington is back in Los Angeles, moping around. And that he is recruited for one final mission to finally, at last, take out Nirmata once and for all. And that's our story here. And it's his journey back in, discovers a bunch of things. And I don't know how far into it you want me to get, but
well, I mean, what you failed to mention is that Joshua, played by John David Washington, is in a relationship with Maya.
Right.
Like
he's pregnant with his child.
But what I mean is that he just wants to have one last moment with Maya. Like that, he explicitly says this. He would give anything to just have a 1 minute with her, one last minute with Maya to spend with effectively what became the love of his life. We find out later that he was really on a mission because Nirmata is basically their god, right?
It's the AI god, yes.
The AI god, like the AI, almost like what do they call in Tibet? The
Dalai Lama.
The Dalai Lama. It's basically their Dalai Lama. They're sort of God on this earthly plane, so to speak. And that's so you covered the basic stories around this mission, and I loved so much of this film. And I'll say this, and even though I have we'll get to the problems next, I want to start with the positives on this movie because there are a lot of positives, and this is why I think ultimately for me the film was a disappointment, and it's everything that happened in the second half or around the third act. I'm not sure what you think, Alan, but there's so
we're close. We're close.
There's so many things I really loved. The actor, the young actor who plays the child. I don't know the name of this actor.
Madeline Voiles.
Okay, this little kid is a better actor than John David Washington. Bursting into tears at moments, delivering these lines. Am I going to go to heaven? Are you going to just these simple lines coming from a child hit so hard. And in addition, there's so many great things about this movie. And Gareth Edwards, of course, we all know famously, he did Rogue One. So he made the movie Rogue One. And the movie famously, people forget, that movie was taken away from him. It was taken away from him. It was finished by Tony Gilroy, who went on to do Andor. And we saw an entire trailer for Rogue One where none of the footage from that trailer is actually in the movie. There were stills that were leaked that came out, and none of those stills are from the movie. They completely remade his movie, and many of the ideas he had in Rogue One he used in this movie. And this is what great sci-fi does. Great sci-fi proposes ideas. It doesn't tell you how to think. And I'll say this, I don't think there's really anything, at least that stood out to me as being so-called woke in this film. There's nothing particularly preachy. There are a lot of really good ideas that are discussed or introduced, and then it is up to the viewer to decide how to react or what to think about those ideas. Concepts of God and religion, concepts of, AI, like, can we coexist with AI? And they're just okay. So the things that were great about this film, one I need to point out, movie was made for $80 million. Okay, that's less than a third of the budget of the Marvels, of Indiana Jones. How is Disney making these movies that still look bad? Freaking Thor: Love and Thunder. Some of the CG in some of the recent Marvel movies have just been god awful. This is the best special effects I have seen in a science fiction movie I can't even remember. There is such an integration of the reality of these sims. They call them simulants, right? Which are these simulated people, and you can donate your likeness and face so that a simulant can kind of become more human looking. And the concepts in it are like, it's like part Blade Runner, part Aliens, part like District 9, part like so many films, a lot of science fiction films you love, but mixed up in a way that feels very like an original world. It's set in the world of 2065, is, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And
by the way, ironically, this is a Fox. Oh, I'm sorry, a 20th Century. So this is Disney. This is a Disney movie.
Technically Disney, but thankfully it doesn't look like the corporate culture of Disney has infiltrated Fox just yet. But so many great ideas. Like there's even like just one, it's also part of war movie. Once it kicks off where Joshua goes on the mission now to get Narmada, like it's a war film. It's aliens. We're going to what they call New Asia, right? So and they make it very clear when you see the ships and this giant thing called Nomad, which is this menacing, almost devil-like ship that will hover over a target, and you see it's targeting light on the ground that just sort of moves into then it sort of finds a target, which is generally they're taking out a base, and they just nuke it from the air. It's insane. So then you've got the simulants fighting the humans, and the simulants kind of are, they make the simulants very sympathetic. They make the United States very unsympathetic, very cruel. They portray Americans as very cruel, but with justification, because they killed millions of people in Los Angeles. And they introduced this in the very beginning of the movie, right? That Los Angeles blew up from a nuclear bomb. The simulants were at fault. The AI was at fault. And now there's a war against AI, which has now taken refuge in New Asia. They don't even say where it is, but it's got to be somewhere in Tibet. Because it's this weird mix of, and you saw it in Rogue One, a mix of like a more primitive culture, right? The sort of like rice paddies in Tibet, and, common folk that live in straw huts, mixed with robots, right? Mixed with the simulants, the AI. But with these hidden bases, and they're trying to infiltrate the US, led by Joshua, or actually led by Allison Janney, who plays a character named Howell. He's great in this. Allison Janney is so good as this hardened. This is how you do a character like this. They never at once sort of
an empowered female, you're saying?
Yeah, they never. No, she's just a badass.
Yeah,
she's like channeling Sigourney Weaver, and even though she's making choices I don't agree with, I'll say that I really loved her performance in it. And you're not safe in this movie. And there are other females in this film that are fighting in the war. Nobody's safe. And there's so many good ideas, like with the way that simulants work, that you can take the final brain waves from a human and reanimate in a simulant to kind of get information. Like there's still brain activity even after someone dies. And so they harvest brain activity from a fallen soldier to kind of track where Nirmata and Joshua may have gone. That was really cool. And these, one of the best things, and you could see, I feel like Gareth Edwards made this movie to make a point. He made it like, I'm not going to be treated this way like by a company like Disney or Lucasfilm. I'm going to make a science fiction film on my terms. And you know what? It may not be perfect, but I mean, I enjoyed so much about the film. It falls apart for me in the third act. Well, but in terms of like, there's an exchange between two bombs, which reminds me of this movie Dark Star. Did you ever see the movie Dark Star? John Carpenter.
No.
It's a science fiction film made by Dan O'Bannon. It's like a student film, and it's there are sentient bombs in the movie.
Oh yeah, that part. Okay, I know what you're
talking about. So it's at the very end of the film, whatever. But Dan O'Bannon wrote it, and it's directed by John Carpenter, but it was basically, it's like, it feels like a student film. But one of the interesting concepts in it is they have these bombs, and the bombs are alive. Well, in the creator, there are these bombs, and there's this quick exchange between these two bombs. They're like sitting next to each other, like, oh shoot, like now they need to use us. And they're kind of talking, and one's a little bit more timid. And it's basically like looks like a giant garbage can that with arms and legs that runs towards its target. And it's so weird. And it's like, well, its purpose is to explode. And that just exchange between two inanimate objects is better than anything I've seen in Ahsoka. Okay. It's just like, when you look at the special effects and some of the concepts and this idea of the AI created a god that they worship, that is sort of like the Dalai Lama. So I could sit here and rave quite a bit about so many aspects of the film that I really loved.
Well, let me tell you what. And it's a beautiful.
I want to hear your thoughts, Alan.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, gorgeous film.
Yes,
all the images are breathtaking. The nomad, the bad bombing machine.
Yes,
gave you a video game feel that just felt organic and worked. So it's a beautiful film, and that's the best thing I can say about the creator, because it falls apart for me from the get-go, and I'll tell you why. So we're gonna transition. Do you want to keep talking about how great this movie is, or
no, hold any spoilers, please.
No, I'm not gonna spoil it, but
okay.
But this is for me, when it comes to science fiction. This started way back with Blade Runner. I have never been into this idea that, look, I'm going to get killed by the machines, but the idea that we need to feel sympathy and empathy for androids, that's just something that I've never embraced. And I'm not sure what happened. I'm not, if you think about it logically, to fall in love with a robot, a machine, to give it personality, to give it, to treat it like another human being, that's just not the camp I'm in. And I'm pro people. I'm pro human beings. I will save a human being over a robot any day. And again, when the robots take over, I'm the first one to go. But I'm just not. You kind of have to buy into that story, that idea, that theme, in order to like this movie more than I did, and I just couldn't. And so so right off the bat, I'm somewhat detached from the emotional heart of the film. And maybe you could speak. I don't know what you think about that idea, but even Measure of a Man in Star Trek: The Next Generation, Data, it's just like, well, he still is an android. And so there you go. Yeah, I'm a racist robot, Solomon Thornton.
Well, before we get into any spoilers, again, we'll put a warning up and we'll talk about spoilers for just a few minutes. But where the movie fell apart was in the second half for me.
Well, hold on. I kind of want to know what you think about it. I mean, are you do you love robots? Would you like to marry one?
I think they will be a tool. Although we've had our own problems with AI. We found a website like in India that is stealing reviews from the Film Threat website that were written by Alan. They rewrite them in Chat GPT and rerun the reviews the same day. We're trying to get this site shut down. I may do a video about it, but like AI is being used to rewrite reviews from the Film Threat website, put them on another website like they're theirs so they can build up their traffic and make money.
Yeah.
They're
It's
stealing
kind of
our
funny to
stuff.
read.
Huh?
It's funny to read it
Yeah,
because they're just replacing words with synonyms.
yeah, it's like looking at a terrible book report from a college kid that is ripping off another student. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it's like. But that's a whole separate issue. No, I'm not. I welcome new technology. I feel like every new technology though is a double-edged sword. Everything, like our Black Mirror, phones that we carry around. They've solved all these problems. I can get a taxi like this. I can order food like this. I can do so many things. I can navigate. It's, the GPS. I can get anywhere with it. I can get data and information all in my hands. They've effectively invented a tricorder. I can check what the weather's going to be 10 days from now. It's these Black Mirrors have solved devices. They've also created a whole host of new problems, including mental illness in teens. It's created this compare where you look at Instagram and how come my life isn't as great as the lies this person is posting on Instagram to show how great their life is? Why isn't my life? If you compare your life to someone on Instagram, one, I think you're wasting your time because that person's life is a complete lie. I know firsthand certain people that post how great their lives are on Instagram and how amazing their life is and what a lie that person's life is in real life. So I know firsthand.
Yeah, but my issue is I'm not sure that I would want to risk my life to save robots. And the other thing is, we're supposed to feel sympathy for the child, for Alfie here. The only reason is because they built her young and cute, and so that's the motivate. That's why we need to save her. That's why people won't kill her, is because she's cute. There's not a lot of depth to that, and this is I guess my problem with the overall theme of this movie.
Yeah, well,
we can get into details later, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are the weaknesses of the film? So, on the one side, there's this incredible achievement of an $80 million movie that looks like it cost more money than any of the big budget films that have come out this year or in the last couple years. How did Gareth Edwards do that? There's also so many good ideas in terms of the way even the simulants that don't have faces feel very animated. They've got like these they act human. Like you'll see them in the huts and they're sort of integrated with family and you see that there's an attachment. He did such a good job of creating this world. It makes me really want to see the Gareth Edwards cut of Rogue One and what he was trying to do. Okay, but here are the weaknesses. Starting off, I'm sorry, John David Washington is weightless as an actor. There are so many scenes that could have been better. He seems like he's walking through this role. And he was weak in Tenet, and the same kind of problems here. I don't think he's a leading man. I honestly think he's not a leading man. Hollywood is trying to make him into a leading man, and I just feel like he's kind of one note. And you can see parts where it feels like he's maybe improvising a little bit, and it just I don't know, like from Tenet to this, it's another big budget movie where he headlines, and I don't feel he's adding a lot of weight to the film. They do make you sympathize with him because his character is effectively a cyborg. He's missing a leg and an arm, so he has he's sort of half AI. He's got this AI arm and leg, and you see him without it. The special effects are incredible.
They also set up the relationship between him and Maya well
Correct.
up front, which I'll bring up Ezra and Sabine.
Right.
Right off the bat, we understand the connection between these two characters and why he's doing what he's doing, and this idea of wanting to see her for the last time. Set up beautifully, set up perfectly, and done in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And Ezra and Sabine. I'll just throw that.
Yeah. So there's that aspect. The other aspect is the story kind of going off the rails, and the third act. I'm not going to talk about anything specific in terms of what happens in the third act. It just seems way too many conveniences, way too many things just worked out. Like, did they have a plan? Because it feels like the third act is just like gets to ridiculous extremes. I'm gonna put up the spoiler warning because there's
not yet. I want to say one thing about
okay,
before we get to it.
Please.
The other problem I have with this movie, and if you are a fan of science fiction, if you love science fiction movies, read science fiction stories, this movie is predictable as hell. I mean, I was calling things in the first act, and the problem with that is, because this is a very typical science fiction story, ends in a very typical science fiction way. And if you understand the genre, you know exactly where this story is going, and it goes there. Absolutely. And the ending, the so-called surprise endings, are very predictable. And so what's happening now is by the end of the first act, you're just waiting for things are going to happen to actually happen. And that kind of takes you out. There's not a lot of depth to it from a science fiction standpoint. And
there are a lot of ideas introduced, a lot of things to think about. Right. And you see the influences from Blade Runner.
Sure, that's I like this world. I like the look of the world. I like the idea of the world. I think you could make sequels from it. You could tell better stories from it. But this particular story, very predictable. And
it also seemed like the third act, there were like 2 third acts. There's like a really interesting place where the movie could have ended on a quiet note, but it had to do some spectacle ending. So it sort of builds up to this moment regarding the relationship between Alfie and Joshua and sort of reconciling that relationship. And it could have almost ended there on a more tragic note. And then there's like another third act, which takes the movie like in this other direction. I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Batman, where it has to become an action adventure sequence in the third act.
It's like, but wait, there's more, and then there's this whole other action sequence that takes them on another journge. I will say I
did love the ending. The we'll get into spoilers, but there was an emotional moment at the end that I thought was great. And
okay, well, if I know,
but everything up until that point was predictable.
All right. So I'll say this. We're gonna pivot to spoilers in a second, but I'll say this: the creator, I still recommend this movie, if only to see what's possible. As a genre fan, someone who's been watching science fiction since I was a kid, I saw Star Wars in the theaters in first run, along with Alien and Blade Runner and Krull, among other things. It was like, I lived at a time where there'd be like maybe 3 science fiction movies a year, if that would be released in theaters. Now we live in a golden age of every other week there's something new. So I feel like we're a little spoiled, but I'll say I still recommend this movie from the standpoint of just to see the world building itself. The world building is just on a level that, Star Wars cannot do this. And there's a reason they hired Gareth Edwards. He was able to pull all this together, the integration of the effects into a completely original world that you can see some of the influences, but just to see it on the big screen, if you've already got tickets to see it or plan to see it, don't let our problems with it dissuade you from going to see the film. I'm recommending you go see it, especially if you're a genre fan. There are so many things that are so well executed. And then there's the third act of the film.
I mean, I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you. It's a bare minimum recommendation, just because, look, even though we've seen it before, it's an okay science fiction story. And again, this world is beautiful. I think the buzz, I think if this movie makes any money, it'll be because of the world that is built and not necessarily because of the story being told.
And now we're going to give you a warning. We're doing spoilers now. I'm going to give you a countdown. I recommend that you mute. I'll keep this warning label up, and when we're done with spoilers, I'll take the warning label down. The scroll at the very bottom of the screen.
I'd say 10 to 15 minutes. Well,
we're not going to talk for 15 minutes on spoilers.
All right, 10 minutes. Somewhere around there.
5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
All right, ready, folks? You can dip out or you can mute. 3, 2, 1. Okay, the ending of the movie, the very ending you're talking about, is the exact same ending as Rogue One. It's a moment where Joshua is reunited with a sim version of Maya that has her thoughts embedded, her final, like her brain waves. So it basically is Maya in simulant form. They have a final moment as the Nomad ship blows up. And there are way too many conveniences. You see, there's this moment at the end of the film where Joshua is going to be the one that basically puts down the weapon. They just refer to Alfie as a weapon. Alfie is the weapon. Alfie can basically do these little prayer hands and then suddenly basically become a human EMP and knock out all the technology that's sort of within a certain.
Well, she can control technology as well.
She can control technology, kind of like R2-D2 on the Death Star, hacking in. So basically, Alfie is like this human hacker, right? So, oh my God, we just lost like 50 people watching. But so Alfie is constantly doing this motion and then knocking things out, kind of helping along the way. And this can get dangerous because her power will grow. It's very much Akira-like in a sense, right? You kind of feel like sympathy for this so-called weapon, which is this very cute child. The actress who plays the child is fantastic. But there's just the third act, this third act that they sort of add on to the film after this moment where they knock her out is very E.T. like in the sense of like E.T. is, dies and then is reborn. Well, that happens with Alfie. Then they're on a plane to the moon. That gets diverted onto Nomad. It's just way too many conveniences. Like it just over and over. You're like, did they plan this out? Because none of this makes sense. And then the ending of the movie ends exactly like Rogue One. Did no one point out to Gareth Edwards, like, hey, this is just like Rogue One. You're seeing this dying moment in a bomb with the two characters in an embrace for their last moments as they die. Now, maybe Gareth Edwards was doing this as an FU to Disney Lucasfilm. FU, this is what I wanted to do. You didn't let me. I'm going to show you. I'm a director not to be trifled with. And I'll say this. Gareth Edwards is going to get hired. Regardless of the flaws in the third act, and they are plentiful. Alan, I want to hear yours. You need 15 minutes apparently to talk about all of them.
No, I know. I wasn't sure how much of a spoiler you want to do, but you're pinpointing it to a moment. So
that's but like you maybe felt differently about the moment that I did. All I thought was Gareth Edwards ripped off himself, which I guess is okay. But he wrote this script. I feel like he probably needed another writer. He could have maybe fleshed out the story, handed it off to another writer who would have just made it. Yeah. And there's so many other moments. There's a moment where Alfie's in the shuttle and some tentacle creature comes down. You didn't need all that, could have been cut out. Completely unnecessary. And then there's some confusing editing where Nomad is blowing up, but they're still in the middle of this thing. Like, aren't they, like, the ship is blowing up and it seems to blow up for like 5 minutes. It doesn't make any sense. So, and they're all building to, and it's still blowing up. And then Alfie gets off safely. And then they have this moment with Maya. It just, I was really disappointed. I wanted to love it because I was halfway through the movie. I can't believe how much I'm loving this. I cannot believe this is smart science fiction. It touches on ideas. The production value and the world building is incredible. The performances are great with the exception of the lead actor. Yeah, Alan, what are your thoughts? And you can get into spoilers. We'll take that warning off.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to what I said. The ending, everything leading up to ending, predictable. You kind of knew that this ending was going to happen. that you know, a spoiler again, that Joshua dies, uh, you know, and that Alfie is saved. This is just typical science fiction tropes. You know, he has. It's like, you know, again, the problem is okay, and then the thing that really that really, you know, that I picked out really from the start was just the relationship between Joshua and Alfie. Ultimately, I don't know if we want to spoil that, but you know, again, total science fiction, and so by then, by the time we get to this point, I'm just sitting there going, all right, well, you know, this is just playing out like it should play out. Nothing special. You know, and that's something I think I want in a movie, especially movies made today, is do something different. Try to elevate this genre. He's elevated the look of the world building, and on a budget that's more reasonable. But
Right.
that's not enough. You got to elevate the story. And ultimately it just fell flat. And I was, you know, I was just bored because, you know, nothing is surprising to me at this point, especially in the second and third act. So that's what I'll say about that moment. You know, you knew it was going to happen. It happened, and you know, you just get kind of numb to it because it always happens.
Yeah, look, the ending just didn't work. However, what Gareth Edwards did is he proved you can make ultimately big budget spectacle movies should be becoming less expensive
Yeah.
as technology
Under
advances.
$100 million.
Under $100 million for this film. The reported budget is $80 million. Insane that a film that looks as good as this,
Yeah.
that is as epic as this is, that is so much in the terms of tech and what it felt also very James Cameron influenced. I just so incredible that it was this well done. But on such a low budget, it's just disheartening that they had to have like a second, third act that basically, for me, went off the rails.
Yep.
Um,
All right, we done with
so,
spoilers.
Alan, do you recommend the creator?
Barely. I mean, I probably wouldn't recommend it, but I think it's worth watching just from the technical standpoint here.
Well, same here.
Yeah.
I recommend it for that. We're done talking about spoilers. Let's get to
Yeah.
your comments and questions here. Oh my God, we lost a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. But again, it's like you mentioned it. It just shows that an epic movie can be made for under $100 million. If you watch my interview with Michael Mendelsohn, you know, I asked him why are these budgets so inflated, and he said one of the big reasons is the actors. You know, they're getting paid, you know, tens of millions of dollars to be this in these films, and that's one aspect, one big aspect of why these budgets are ballooning. And if you watch Paulie's interview with Cameron Pasha, you know, it's funny that the actors are making a lot of money, but the writers have kind of screwed themselves, and they're unable to make this kind of money that the actors are making. And listen to that interview; it'll illumine the situation that's going on with the WGA.
And subscribe to Latino Slant.